We've all seen the headlines. A congressman convicted of a $60 million bribery scheme to pass legislation benefiting a powerful utilities company. Another politician is convicted of taking bribes from businessmen in exchange for using their political influence to benefit them. And a third politician is accused of illegally directing business to their law firm and accepting bribes to influence legislation. Clearly, there is a need for more government oversight and accountability. So where do we start? There is one common aspect of many of these cases that bears calling out. In the first case mentioned, that politician served in the House of Representatives for 6 terms. The second also served in the House for 6 terms and served another 3 terms in the Senate. And the third, you're not going to believe this, they served in the House for 25 terms. These are real cases. Hello, my name is Dennis Clark, and these are examples of long-serving, multi-term congressmen and are the basis for my talk today. As a youth in 1976, I remember clearly as our country celebrated its bicentennial, marking the 200th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. Later, I would proudly serve in the United States Navy for 6 years. These seminal events galvanized my patriotism, and coupled with my research, has convinced me more now than ever that we must set congressional term limits to restore a more responsive political system. Next, I want to share with you some of the negative impacts of unlimited term limits and dig into what needs to change, the benefits of doing so, and then finally talk about how you can make a difference. So let's establish why unlimited term limits hurt our country. Some multi-term politicians often develop close ties with lobbyists and special interest groups, accumulating excessive power, increasing the risk of corruption, influencing policy for personal and political gain, and therefore no longer acting in the public's best interest. This entrenched power has been used to create partisan gridlock for political gain, and failed bipartisanship can be costly. In fact, in 2019, the government shut down for 35 days due to the inability to agree to the proposed federal budget. This shutdown cost the U.S. an estimated $11 billion and left about 800,000 federal employees either out of work or working for free. This corruption fuels our distrust in the government, which has additional consequences such as poor voter turnout and the reluctance of citizens to even run for office. So the bottom line, establishing term limits for Congress will benefit all of us by restoring responsiveness and accountability. And they'll do it in the following ways. 1, accountability increases as lawmakers may be more motivated to make responsive and impactful changes rather than focus on re-election strategies and political gain. 2, new congressional members will be more likely to reach across the aisle to gain bipartisan support for their efforts, accelerating the lawmaking process. And 3, voter participation and trust in the democratic process will increase with more people running for office, creating more competitive and diverse elections. New members bring fresh ideas and innovation. Now, implementing term limits requires a constitutional amendment, and anytime that is considered, there is and should be much debate over that matter. Those who oppose term limits say that limiting terms can disrupt continuity in lawmaking. Casey Burgat, the director of the Legislative Affairs Program at the Graduate School of Political Management at George Washington University, said last year that term limits often force people out of a job when they just start to become effective and knowledgeable. Now, even assuming a single term, I would argue that if it took any of us 2 to 6 years just to, quote, start to become effective and knowledgeable in our job, we would never have a job. And besides, the Constitution was already crafted to ensure continuity. One final note worth mentioning, a 2023 Pew Research Center poll showed that an overwhelming majority of adults, 87% from both parties, favored limiting the number of terms that members of Congress are allowed to serve. What should be the term limits? What should they be? The Constitution was brilliantly written with a series of checks and balances, and as such, the terms for the Senate and the House were intentionally set with different periods. The House of Representative members, they serve for 2 years to ensure those elected officials most closely represent their constituents. Senators serve 6 years to enable more consistency and stability in lawmaking, and to balance against any immediate pressure from fleeting public interest. Note that or I should say the concern for term limits is not new. Our founding fathers debated it, as documented in the Federalist Papers and other records of the Constitutional Convention of 1787. Eventually, they decided against term limits, expecting congressional members to either self-govern or they expected the public to limit through elections. As we can now see, however, these expectations did not come to pass. In fact, Congress came to the same conclusion in 1951 when they amended the Constitution to establish term limits for the presidency. Therefore, we should set the limit to 2 consecutive terms for both the House and the Senate. This would align with the presidency and provide adequate time for congressional members to achieve all that the Constitution originally identified for the respective roles. Now, you may be asking yourself, how can I help? I'm only one person. Because we live in a democracy, each of us has the power to drive change. Number 1, vote. Voting is the cornerstone of our democracy and ensures that you have a say in who represents you in government. 2, sign a petition to demonstrate support, such as the aptly named Term Limits on Congress petition. 3, contact your state legislatures and let them know that you want term limits set for Congress. In fact, the USA.gov website provides an easy way to look up their specific legislators. Congress has become inefficient and in many ways ineffective. Powerful lobbyists, cronyism, and a lack of partisanship all contribute to the inability to pass much needed legislation for the people, by the people. Setting congressional term limits is needed to restore a more responsive political system. We each have an opportunity and perhaps an obligation to effect change for the good by letting Congress know it's time for term limits. Thank you.